Do you know, I was just about to step in and ask Frank for his thoughts on why so many fights seem to have fallen like flies.
Well,
is there something in the water, Steve? Because
no,
it's just unbelievable. Have you ever known a spell of a month where we've lost so many big fights?
I haven't. I was talking to Mick Costello from 5 Live about this yesterday before we went off to Portugal for some athletics. And we were, you know, the fights fall out of bed all the time, but seldom do big fights fall out of bed. And I mean, there's never been a period ever where 2 back-to-back super British fights have fallen out of bed. Bear in mind, between the combined audience at the O2, if it's a sellout, and at the Kelsenkirchen, the stadium, if that's a sellout, the combined audience is nearly 90,000 people.
Chuck in Finland as well a couple of weeks
ago. But that
earlier.
wasn't a Brit. I'm talking about 2 Brits. I mean, fights fall out of bed. One can fall out of bed in Mexico. You might never know about it. One can fall out of bed in the Philippines. You might never know about it. But I'm talking about Amir Khan and David Haye, British superstars, in major world title fights, 7 days apart. They both fell out of bed. Well, I've got to tell you, Andy, I've been earning a living from this sport since about 85. Okay, it's a long time, my friend, trust me. And I can't remember 2 British fights back-to-back falling out of bed. Fights always fall out of bed. Enzo Maccarinelli, who's going to come on the show later on, he had about 3 or 4 world title fights. Goka put last year on him. You know, different guys were going to fight him, and they didn't happen. Joe Calzaghe pushed back his Roy Jones fight last year. But we're talking here, those fights all tended to fall out of bed, Joe's one especially, with a good few weeks to go. One of Enzo's was quite close. It fell out of bed on about the Thursday. One of the guys failed some sort of blood test or heart test or whatever. No, he wasn't an American. They're the ones that failed a heart test. But this is back-to-back, fairly short notice, and it's thrown a spanner in the works. And there's a lot of people sending me emails who are very concerned about both fights, about regaining the money. And Frank was right to point out there he hopes that there's not too many ticket agencies, ticket companies taking their whack, because it's not the right time to be hitting boxing fans in the pocket.
Yeah, I know we're going to turn attention to the States as well shortly, but you look at Floyd Mayweather went, Kelly Pavlik went, that was a Satanta fight. It's mentioned the Finland fight. It's not just in Britain, it's just unbelievable. You'd think somebody's conspiring against us.
Well, there we go, there's Kelly Pavlik, his fight went, that wasn't a big problem. There's Ruslan Shagiev, of course he fouled some sort of hepatitis scare. Big David, he pulled his something on his back, slipped his disco, as we used to say in the old days. Floyd Mayweather, he's either hurt a rib, a hand, or he's looking at Pac-Man. There's our man Kotelnik. He's had a toothache on the left-hand side. Really cheesy pictures of the boxers. They're great pictures, aren't they? That's the cheese parade. I mean, it could have been you coming up. No, it could have been you coming up next there. Andy Kerr.
Wouldn't have been surprised.
Nappy rash on your hands, nappy rash on your hands. Now, one thing about Mayweather, someone sent me in an email about Floyd Mayweather. It's from David. He says that, do you actually believe that Floyd's problems are his ribs? Well, I've got to be honest with you, Dave, no one's really sure if they're his ribs or he's feeling it a bit in the pocket. Because July 18 fight means probably Floyd Mayweather, looking at the way he fights, wouldn't fight again in October, November. Pac-Man, after last weekend, is talking about maybe fighting Miguel Cotto. Bob Arum wasted no time in coming up with some sort of date in October, which is bizarre because generally big fights are November, which I thought was a little smokescreen. So you never know. Perhaps Bob, who's a bit of a, he's a bit of a duck and a diver. Perhaps Bob decided that he would put a bit of pressure on Mayweather, and then suddenly Mayweather pulls out of this fight. I tell you what, there's very few people in America that would know. One of them's coming on the show in a second.
Indeed. Right, we're going to bring Steve Ford on the show. Very quickly, though, I've got a quick email here which you can answer. If you can, a one-word answer from Nicholas. Wants to know where will Klitschko Shagiev be on Saturday?
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
That's 2 words. Oh, yeah, forget that American scare report. Rubbish. That fight's happening. Big time.
Right. Let's bring in US boxing writer Steve Ford to the show. Steve, welcome to the Steve Bunce Boxing Hour.
Thank you so much.
Steve,
pleasure to be here.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I tell you, Madison Square Garden must have been buzzing on Saturday night. Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, I know it was a fight you watched very closely. Great to see?
Great to see. More importantly, great to see Madison Square Garden virtually sold out. That is such a positive. It doesn't happen that often, and it speaks volumes about Cotto as an attraction here in New York.
Now, Steve, was it the same time or the week before that our own Hugh McElveny and Lennox Lewis were up at the Canastota Hall of Fame getting their awards, son? Were you up there for that?
No, I did not go to Canastota because we had the Boxing Writers Dinner on Friday. We had Cotto on Saturday, so it was a little busy weekend. Unfortunately, everything was scheduled at the same time.
Now, you got an award last week, didn't you, at the Boxing Writers?
I did indeed. Long and meritorious service. I guess if you stick around long enough, these things happen.
It's all for your Boxing Monthly column. So now we just showed a little bit of Cotto and Clotty there. When did that take off, Steve? When did it start to, get a bit of a buzz in the city?
As soon as it was announced, because it really doesn't matter anymore who Cotto fights. He draws a big crowd regardless. I mean, when he fought Jennings, he drew a decent-sized crowd for a fighter that was virtually unknown, so Cotto is the franchise now in New York, the only fighter who can draw that kind of crowd.
Yeah, I know he's been the best seller there in 10 years. And I've seen a couple of his fights there, and I've seen him a couple of times. Do you think that he's getting... I know it was a great performance last week, Steve, and I know he eventually won, but he was helped by the fact that Clotty fell asleep in the last 4 or so rounds. What are you hearing Cotto's going to be doing, Steve? What's the buzz there?
Well, we'll see if he's going to fight Pacquiao. The fight would seem not to make sense because, at what weight do they fight?
Yeah, of course.
Cotto is not a small welterweight.
He's a big old boy, yeah.
Yeah, we know how much he struggled to make 140 all those years, or 10 stone, and I can't picture him doing what Mosley is apparently willing to do, which is to drop 3 or 4 pounds in order to accommodate Pacquiao. So it makes sense from a promotional sense because Arum would control the fight, having both fighters. But I just can't see Cotto fighting at 143 or 144 pounds.
No, I can't see it either. What about the suggestion that the Mayweather's withdrawal is possibly influenced by the fact that Pacquiao and Cotto was moving closer? Or are you going with the rib injury, back injury, arm injury? What are you going with, Steve-O?
I don't doubt the injury. The longer Mayweather goes without a payday, the worse for him because
of course.
His money needs have been well documented. And I can't picture Mayweather turning down a chance to make, X amount of $1 million for 4 or 5 months. So I tend to believe, for that reason, I tend to believe the injury.
There's an injury. All right, well, I'm going to go with you. Now, Steve, what about the big heavyweights? Okay, we're still waiting for that American saviour to come along, but instead we've got the Uzbek against the Ukraine in Germany at the weekend. I mean, you love these big Eastern Bloc guys, don't you, Big Stevie?
Oh, you know how much I love the heavyweight division. Steve, I found out something that you may not know. This is a scoop for you. Do you know that David Hay is actually from Kansas? He's American. I never knew that before.
No, I never knew it either.
We're claiming him now, so if you want to dispute that, that's your business.
So he's from Kansas. Have we got anybody, have we spoken to any of his relations back in Kansas yet, Steve?
My proof is very shaky, but I ask you to stay with me on this because we have nobody, and I don't think it's fair that you have Khan and you have Frach, and you have a lot of guys. So we're taking Hay, and in all honesty, all kidding aside, if David Hay were American, he'd be absolutely gigantic. And instead, because he's not American, hardly any American fans know him. As you know, he's only been on television here one time.
Yeah, well, listen, hopefully he'll get a big fight with one of the Klitschko's or Chagayev or Valuev or Maskayev or Samuel Peter if he comes back, or John Ruiz or Don King. He'll get a fight with someone, hopefully, before Christmas.
Somebody, but in the meantime, we have what we have for Saturday. The only reason I don't think it's a bad fight is with the exception of the 2 Klitschko's, you can make a very good argument that Chagayev's the next best heavyweight in the world, physically it's not the best matchup because he's kind of a small heavyweight, but I'm glad he's getting a chance anyway, and whatever happens, happens. But any fight that doesn't involve David Hay right now, for me, is not all that interesting.
Listen, Steve, thanks very much for joining us. Congratulations on your award last week. We'll speak to you soon.
My pleasure, Stevie. Be good.
Thanks, boss man.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, what a top guy, yeah.
I'm a big fan, like Steve. He's a sort of grudging fan. I like Ruslan Shagayev. I've liked him for many years, and I talk to people about him, and I get a lot of stick on some of the websites when I've praised him. I think he's technically a really good fighter. I think he closes gaps down well, and I think he gives Vladimir Klitschko kittens this week. I really do. I think he gives him big problems. Steve, let's get a go. Quick email here. Paul Kerr wants to say big thanks to Paul Appleby, says been helping him up with his business yesterday. Wants a quick shout out to Paul Kerr and wants to ask you, no danger of any more fights going down in the next couple of weeks, is there? Oh, listen, there's something, as you said, Andy, you hinted, there's something in the water. There's the British Boxing Board of Control put out a press release this morning at about 11 o'clock saying that the McGee-Quigley fight was off. the people at Haymaker are not saying anything officially, but Boxing News' very own website is running that story, some quotes from Quigley. Looks like that fight's in doubt, and that causes a problem because the Border Control have also ordered a purse bid for Paul Smith, Smigger from Liverpool, Scouse legend Paul Smith, to fight the winner of Quigley and McGee. So that situation could get ugly. Quigley won the title when he fought Dodson for McGee's title. McGee had stepped aside to allow him to fight because he was injured. It is a tawdry and confusing mess. So we're not absolutely sure who's going to top the bill on July 4 at the Olympia up in Liverpool, because the Border Control are saying that fight is off. And if the Border Control say it, our good friend Robert Smith, if he says it, then it's off, big boy.
OK, we'll wait and see what happens.